60% of my time running a think tank for children on the spectrum of autism, to kind of propel them into some form of giftedness. And other than that, I spend about 30 to 40% of my time with Procurement League, hosting Thursdays with Procurement League, and doing a lot of little other things here and there to just keep the community alive. So I lead global community building operations for Procurement League. So this is really exciting. I'm so humbled and excited to talk to the procurement doctor, because we've had lots of people. We've had 16, 7. How many procurement Thursdays of Procurement League we've had, Shahina?
Approx more than 20 to 23.
Oh, wow. So this is the first time in 23 Thursdays that we've had a procurement doctor come in. So this is really exciting. I'll quickly introduce to my understanding, but you're going to do a better job. So for Karthik to finally be the doc of procurement, he spent time at MetLife, at Bristlecone, which is a Mahindra company, back at MetLife, and just a lot of time consulting in every possible sphere in the space of procurement. And now he's a consultant. And I'm going to hand it over to you to properly tell your story, and then we'll kick off with the pitch.
Thank you, Devangana. Well, it's a pleasure to see the crowd as a fact, and a lot of known names: Anand, Ashok, Anuj, Mahesh. I know we all know each other from before, so thank you for joining, guys. And you guys keep jumping on wherever I go to speak. It's a true pleasure to have you guys on. And Devangana, you did very well in introducing me. Thank you for that. I've been in procurement close to 2 decades now. I started off as a regular procurement guy who was helping with the requisition to pay and going through the trenches and helping all of that. I managed the category, then I moved into a category buying, which was environmental services, professional services, and professional services and contracted services. These are the categories that I managed, and a few other categories. From there, I got into getting into consulting world, which was helping them transform their procurement processes ground up with technology majorly being on the forefront, with people wanting to change their business process as well, policy procedures as well. So that's what I've entangled in over the years. A lot of freelance consulting right after the MetLife second time gig, Devangana, that was a freelance consulting, but they called me back because they can't let go of me. So they called me back after a few years to help them with something else. And then, yeah, and that particular stint was me working out of Dubai, helping them in the European region and a few other regions in the US. So that was the last thing as a freelancer. And then I was forced to start off my own consulting firm, which is the Procurement Doctor's consulting firm. And what I do here is I'm the principal consultant. I help with, again, the same thing that I love to do, which is helping procurement organizations by diagnosing their current business process, technology, data, people, and then give them solutions as to depending on what issues they're facing. And then I'm also called upon on a lot of second opinions as well, where somebody else has consulted with them, and I'm pulled in to check and see if they're going in the right direction. It depends on whether your organization is looking for a six-pack ab or just wants to lose 10 pounds to get fitter as a procurement organization. So that's where I'll come in and I'll help.
I love that. I love how you give analogies. Even on our last call, I was just like, Shahina, can we bring him ASAP? I love his analogies. Okay. All right. So let's start off with, I'm most excited to hear, Karthik, what according to you is procurement?
Oh, wow. So let me come up with a very layman analogy to start with, or a story, to be honest. Okay, just so that everyone gets what the heck is procurement, because usually it's very confusing even for you to tell within your family as well. I work in procurement, so then your mama, tao, chachi, they're like, what the heck is that? And then you spend the next 15 minutes and then you end up saying something else altogether. It's a complicated thing. So let's take the setup of it's Christmas, right? So it's a kid asking his father a Christmas gift, or his mom for a Christmas gift, which is a video game. Okay, mom goes to the dad and she says, do we have enough money for this? So the dad says, okay, let me look into that. And he comes back and meets the kid, just like any family, right? And he asks, what kind of video game, to understand more. That to understand more about that. And then they go, mom and dad sit together on Amazon and do the purchase, and the kid gets the kid gets the item. So this is a regular setup in your home, right? So if you flip it to a corporate or a business thing, imagine the boy to be the requisitioner, who is requesting what he wants, the mom to be kind of procurement, the dad to be the budget approver to some extent, or the technical reviewer as well. And he's giving a go ahead. And then they're coming back, checking with the kid, which is the requisitioner again, as to what kind of video game he wants. That's part of the entire process. And then they go and do the purchase itself on Amazon, where they want to ensure that their video game is coming before Christmas, which is the delivery date, right? They want to have good quality because they want the son to be happy, and the best price as well, because it should fit in their pocket. So this is basically procurement in a corporate world, to make it very easy and understandable to everyone. The three types of procurement as well, Devangana. One is direct, indirect, and service procurement. And let's assume that the same parents, the mom bakes cakes for Christmas, and let's assume that last year there were many people who loved the cake that the lady baked, and they were asking her to bake their Christmas cakes for next year. Okay, so let's move this to a procurement side. So what do you need to bake a cake? You need flour, you need butter, you need eggs, you need dry fruits, you need rum, right, to bake a nice Christmas cake. So the procurement of these 5 items is direct procurement. That's what you call direct procurement, which is going into making the cake. What is indirect procurement? Anything other than this. For instance, the electricity that she's using to in the oven. So the indirect piece is the packing or whatever that goes into making that cake, right? And then the services side is, now the mom got a lot of orders, and she can't do it all by herself any longer. So she's hired a temporary maid who can clean the vessels or help her with the packing. So that's the service procurement standpoint. Does that help, Devangana?
That's perfect. So that's perfect.
Yeah.
That's a very good analogy and explanation. And I see that it can be worked in so many different ways of imagination. So thank you. That was very helpful.
The one last part is, even so, procurement is the opposite of sales in a company.
Correct.
Sales is trying to sell things, we're trying to make things for them to sell. So as simple as that.
Correct. Correct. Tell me, if like sales and procurement, there was a Venn diagram, what would be the commonalities between sales and procurement?
Well, there's a lot of, so if you do a Venn diagram between sales and procurement, if you look at it, negotiation is the common part. Here we're trying to negotiate to get a better price in procurement. Sales is trying to sell at a better price, right? Or sell more to a client. Contracts are common. RFPs are common. So if you look at contracts, there's sales contracts where we're trying to, as soon as we get a customer, we're trying to get a signature and ensure that we have as long as contract with the customer from a sales standpoint. And we as procurement want to secure the pricing with the supplier and ensure that we're getting the goods or the services to produce the item for sales. So those are the two common aspects. Both teams also are on the receiving and the giving side of RFPs. For instance, a sales guy needs to respond to a lot of RFPs if he's on the services side to win business for his company. And on the procurement side, you are the organizer of the RFPs to sell stuff or to purchase services from other people. Those are the commonalities that come to my mind. And negotiation is common.
Got it. It's really confusing, I feel, for many people, because a lot of negotiation can sometimes feel salesy, and a lot of sales can sometimes be negotiation. And I see a lot, like I follow a lot of procurement pages, Karthik, and there's so much direct selling of like what they do, their work themselves, that I feel like sometimes, or like even their different functions and their departments and their teams and all of that, I think it can be a little gray and blurred. Like sometimes, I think sometimes full marketing that procurement attempts to do, like, procuring the goods and services, they sell themselves too much to be able to attract the best goods and services. And that balance is hard to sometimes maintain.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
yeah, you're saying that I think it's the other way around, Devangana. It's more so. So I wish procurement was more out there to make their presence being felt. Unfortunately, procurement from if you look at it, procurement purely as a function, they're they're usually are treated like stepchildren within our own
yeah.
company. Sales is always given a higher priority, marketing as well. I wish there was enough of exposure to procurement. I'm glad if there are certain people who are out there and trying to put
But
themselves
you
out
know
there
what?
from a procurement
Karthik?
representation.
I'll be I'll be super honest. Like from a very outside perspective, I spend only 30% of my time in the space of procurement, but I follow a lot of procurement pages, and I feel
Mhm.
like it's very easy from the outside to misunderstand the job of procurement.
Yeah,
On
absolutely.
the inside,
Because
the intention might be something else, but when you look outside in, it can be
mhm,
very easily swayed about what are they really trying to do.
that's right. It's because there's not enough. There's always a bad rap, bad marketing, or the function doesn't exist. It didn't exist for a long time in many organizations. It still doesn't exist in many of the medium and small based organizations. It's just been built up. Unfortunately, in certain cases, it's also been the case where procurement function is built based off uh, personal assistance of each of the business heads. All of them are put together, and that's there you have a procurement team together. So that's how it's been done in the past, and that's why there is no organized way of uh, running the shop as such.
Got it. Yeah, makes sense. Makes sense. Makes sense. Okay. Just to tell me something, Karthik, like I'm always like trying to understand the system in all places. I'm very curious about politics. I love how the ed tech market works. I love how startups work. Do you think we really need to get trained and keep training people in the field of procurement? Or can there be a lot of self loss, winning, and learning? Um, what do you think?
Well, it's been proven over time, Devangana, that people within procurement were not trained, and they just didn't put in the role and they've fighted their way through it. There are a lot of cuts and bruises that procurement professionals have, and they were able to manage or do. Few people have excelled. People have just managed to run the shop of procurement. But I would highly recommend to get trained uh, where you learn from other people's experiences. I myself am a SPSM certified professional, which is Senior Professional Supply Management. So training is always good, right? If you want to excel, do well in a particular role. If there is available training, why not take that training up and learn and do better and accelerate your career or whatever activity that you want to do within procurement. So I would highly recommend to go with training, but largely procurement professionals are not trained. They've learned by being in the job and working in the trenches. There is a lot of the elements of procurement which could be trained, but at the same time, there's a lot of things that you will learn on the job. That's how procurement is, whether it is the category specific dealings, the dealing within a particular region, how it particularly, like for instance, how APAC works. It doesn't work the same way in the US or any other region for instance, Europe. So the local nitty gritties that you need to learn on the job, but the foundation could be laid by having a common training as such.
I love that. I love that. Okay, interesting. I mean, I feel like with anything, you could get 5 degrees in it, but it's about what you do in the field in the same way.
Absolutely.
And like sometimes
See,
you might think,
I've largely been uneducated all my life. I never cared about education as a kid,
yeah,
and now I'm forced to read through every damn thing that that I get to do. Is because that's how I'm now. I'm getting to learn because I didn't learn right at the beginning. I didn't give it enough importance. I started working at the age of intermediate when I was a 10+2 student. I started working, so that's where I got the taste for money, and
yeah,
it was my experience majorly that got me through. But
totally.
now I have to read everything to know that I'm doing it the right way.
Totally. I mean, I keep thinking about it. I mean, I've done 2 masters, 2.5 masters, and I still feel like most of my learning in the space of giftedness and autism and all of that, neuroscience has been on the field, because that just
Absolutely.
gives you some kind of a foundation. But like the work of it begins only after the foundation has been
When
there.
you hit the road, yeah,
Totally,
absolutely.
totally. Okay, awesome, awesome. I love this. So now let's get into my favorite part of this conversation. Karthik, like I see a lot of people. You worked at Mahindra, but you've also seen a lot of small companies doing procurement. You've seen Twitter, but you've also seen a Reddit, but you've also seen Phone Pay, but you've also seen Apna. Like you just seen you have a bird's eye view of everything that is going on. There are Tatas and there is Ashneeb Grover, and there's Kunal Shah, and there's like smaller companies. People are competing with them. You've seen all of that. What is it that, or like you've seen a Taj, but you've also seen a Marriott. What is it that the best companies, the best industries, the best organizations are doing right in the sphere of procurement that smaller companies could learn from them?
Okay. Now, now I'll take that into two parts. Now, when you look at it, what smaller companies can learn from the big
I'm
companies.
sorry, I'm sorry.
Uh,
I'm going to also add to this. What are
mhm.
some smaller companies doing really well that some of the big companies can learn
Could
from,
adapt.
vice versa?
Gotcha. Yeah. So let's start with the piranhas learning from the big white sharks. Okay. So if you look at it, um, the big white sharks, they got a nice, uh, if not anything, they at least have a policy and procedure and a rules established as to how they want to run their procurement operations, regardless of them having a tool or technology or whatever. So because they sweep money, right? They got a lot of audits, a lot of potential of them getting scrutinized because it's a lot of money running through the company, right? If you end up giving a big contract to a particular supplier and there's somebody within your leadership who owns that company, then your company is on in a lawsuit. So if not anything, they at least have a policy and procedure. The small guys, they if they have a good policy and procedure, regardless of them having doing it on email or on SharePoint or an Excel sheet or whatever, if they have a baseline procedure that takes care, it's a stepping stone for them to take the next step of evolving because they know a certain steps what they need to follow to run a particular to request for a new product or dealing with a supplier or how you manage your contracts. So that whenever there's a new guy who comes in, he follows the steps and there's certain rules. If they miss those rules, at least they can catch and fix it. So that's very important for a piranha, a small organization, a startup or a small guy. What the big guys could learn from, like the big white sharks can learn from the piranhas, is to be nimble, to be willing to change, because they're so big, there's so much red tape, they move at snail speed. If there's any little change to be done within the organization, it would be so many loops that they need to jump through. And for the small guys, it's easy. If they did a mistake, they could just turn right back and fix it. The big guys have become so big that they're not as flexible as they are or they should be. For them to evolve and adapt to newer technologies or to see if there's a particular challenge in the entire business process where there's a lot of time being spent in the contract getting signed. Yes, and this is an example. For instance, there's a contract that they're signing with the supplier, and it takes 21 days to sign a contract every time. So that's a lot of time that it takes. Now, if you don't have access to the data, you won't know that it's taking 21 days. So there should be some system procedure that's tracking that time, and then you should take actions against it, like a project against it, to see how you can reduce that 21 days to maybe 12 days or 11 days to ensure that the contracts are signed quicker. So that's one example out there, Devangana.
Hey Karthik, good evening.
Yeah, sure. Good
Hey,
evening.
sorry, I joined, but I couldn't participate initially. I just free of my official thing. Good. It's a really you clearly explained, because I know I'm from a company, right? It is around 2 billion spend happens right across the globe. As Karthik mentioned, right, the policy procedure is very key to an organization to manage the procurement, right? Which is very critical, right? At the same time, you mentioned the Kirana, they move fast, right? And though they don't have the policy and procedure, but the back of mind, everything is there, right? And they do fast. And also the learning the big from the small, right? They should to have some the fast work methodology, right? Where they can expedite their process. Yeah, you definitely, when it's a global company across the globe, the presence is there. So you should have the policy and procedure and all the delegation of authority being placed. So all has to be in the controlled way. But considering that, there should be is some like the faster methodology, right? The express way, right? To get something, it's a need of the customer or need of the organization, need of the internal production, right? Whatever, right? So in that way it works, right? So that's my point of view.
Absolutely.
Yep.
So when I go in with the diagnostic study, right, Ashok, in potentially as the procurement doctor, when I'm looking at your business process, whether you're a small guy, big guy, or whatever, you
Right.
potentially segregate the business process in three different variations, potentially, or at least two. One is which is a requisition or a request which is high in dollar value or high in risk, right? Now, depending on that, there's a particular process you will take. You're basically segregating the steps or the process that you would take as a procurement organization, depending on what is the purchase or what is the criticality of the purchase. Depending
Right.
on that, you flip the process. And there's a quick way of doing things, a mediocre way of doing things, a nice, proper, strategic way of purchasing a particular item, depending on what you're buying as such. Unfortunately, what I've seen in this a few of the big companies, they're so huge. They've been dinged by legal sometime in the past because someone did some mistake somewhere. So they have a 18-step process for whether you're buying a pencil or you're buying radioactive waste or you're buying
Right.
nuclear power. So they have the same process because they're so
Right.
scared that they'll do that mistake again. They might have to go to the court once more.
Right.
So I've seen that happen
Right.
as well in the best of the organizations in the world. And this is a fact. And I
Right.
was surprised to see that.
Right. Right. You are absolutely right. People are saying that 80-20 steps to follow for everything, right?
Yeah.
And it's basically slow down of the your fulfillment, right? Process, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I love it. Okay.
So,
Okay, so I have two questions to ask you, Karthik, right? Like one is, now imagine something like a go first airline. Nobody in India, none of my friends, no one that I know, like even though it's a decently priced, decent airline, it's like they're just like, okay, service bahut kharab hai, ye nahi chalta, wo nahi chalta, this, that, right? On the other hand, Kingfisher started, Vijay Mallya started, it did really well, blah, blah, blah. And then after some years, like after all of that, like for some reasons, it just fell flat and it shut down, and there was a lot of controversy around it. What I'm curious about is how do big companies like what is the procurement function of big companies to keep them creating impact, value, yet up their brand? So there are
Okay.
like many times people are like, this big company has a big name, but they're not doing anything. Like how do we how how do we balance it all out, and what is the role of procurement is my question.
So if, for instance, let's talk about let's talk about Tesla, or maybe somebody as big as Twitter, or somebody as big as Facebook, or whatever may be the case. I haven't had any interactions with any of the procurement folks from this company, although I know one guy from Tesla. I haven't had time to sit with him and talk. This guy's based out of the US, to understand better. But what I would make an assumption here, right? What these big companies, how the procurement is done, it would be basically very fluid, very agile. The procurement team would be working very closely with the stakeholder, or the people who are requesting for that service or the goods. And they would have a very in-depth knowledge of what is the item that is getting purchased. They would be on their toes. The communication would be excellent. The time of the overall time frame of the purchase itself would also be uh, uh, very short in time, and the relationship with the suppliers would not only be with procurement, or it would also be with the executive level of within procurement, like the CPO would be knowing the suppliers very well. It's like a very organic relationship with the supplier as well. It's because they're very critical for you to run your business right. If your suppliers don't do well, then you don't do well as an organization, because they're the ones who are helping you produce whatever quality work that you're giving to your customers. Even the leadership within your company, like your CEO as well, might be might be at least talking to your cream of the tier or top tier suppliers. It's because he wants to be in touch with them, and he wants to genuinely partner and innovate with the suppliers to ensure the smooth procurement operations. That's how I see all of it to work out in a very huge, successful procurement organization as such.
All right. What are some big barricades these days that you're seeing, Karthik, in the space of procurement teams? Like, what are some struggles that, from a bird's eye view, you see procurement teams constantly face?
Yeah. So, couple of things that come to my mind, and I mentioned about this to some extent in my previous answer as well. One is narrow-mindedness, which is again tying back to not willing to change, whether it's a big organization. Like, for instance, I've had in my career at least two organizations that are over 200 years old in terms of the time that they've established. So the 200 plus year old companies, and it was archaic processes that they had, but they were into the presumption that they're the best of the procurement processes that they had in the world. So they had that. They went with that because they were so old, and they thought they are pioneers in the industry. They're doing the best, right? And they never saw it from a third party view. Somebody like the procurement doctor or someone else from outside didn't come and look and say few very simple things that could be changed, right? So that's one I've seen. I'm sorry that I'm telling this still, but it is the state of procurement in a lot of the parts of the world. Uh, Thanks to COVID to some extent, we've got some recognition, but still procurement is given like a stepchildly like treatment within an overall organization. There is very less funding when you compare it to other departments like sales or marketing, in terms of the for the betterment of procurement, whether it's technology or upskilling people or giving the right tool sets for procurement to run in a smooth way. So those are the few things that I've seen in terms of barricades or challenges for procurement. They're not even given proper technology. They think having an ERP itself is a big deal. So you can run the rest of the process on the back of it. So it's very difficult to even sell it to within your executive team. Procurement going in and trying to say that we need something like this for us to function better. So the CEO might first give priority to sales or marketing or some other department as opposed to procurement, because we're doing purchasing at the end of the day. So so they don't give much of a backing to it.
Got it. Got it. Got it. And do you think that procurement training is the right lever to push here, or what would be the right intervention in this jam?
So training is definitely something that needs to be looked into. But to assess that, you might need to do a kind of an assessment of your current way of functioning as a business. If you have a procurement function, how you're functioning as a business, and as a part of that assessment, which could be as a diagnostic assessment, you need to look at your business process, your data, your technology, if you have any. You should have at least an ERP, I'm assuming. If you don't, you could have something. People, whether the people are skilled enough to run the particular business process, right? And these are the 3 or 4 areas that you need to look at. And as an outcome of this particular diagnostic study, you need to fix whatever is in your business process, your data issues, right? If there's any the spend data or whatever, the technology, and people need to be upskilled as well, which is training to make them work in accordance with the best-in-class business process.
Karthik, I have another doubt.
Yeah, Mahesh.
How the technology will impact the procurement?
Technology is definitely going to impact procurement and everyone else, like it always does since the beginning of time, right? It's always, whether you like it or not, it is disrupting all parts of the business, and it does the same with procurement as well. For instance, if you remember back in the day, let's talk about government organization. Like, let's say I have a friend who's a branch manager in SPI, and he's not an old guy. He's somewhat my age itself, and below his 40s. And now the younger guys are getting promoted because they're able to use a computer. And the senior most guys, unless they know the basic computer knowledge, they're not getting promotions, or they're asked to take a VRS, which is a forced retirement as such. So if you're in procurement, something similar is going to happen to you as well. I've heard few of the procurement pundits speak to some extent, like you need to be a data scientist in procurement. You need to become a data scientist if you're in procurement. I don't agree to that. If you love that kind of a work, if you like data, then maybe you could pursue that. But no matter what, if you are doing the right work within procurement, which is doing the human elements, which is negotiations, managing the supplier relationships, that kind of strategic work, then your job is not at stake, if you're alluding to that. And if you're someone who wants to move into a technology background, then maybe you could also learn some Python coding or some other elements, the data elements or whatever, so that could help you in your existing procurement job as well. So, but if you're someone within procurement as on date who's just copying data from an Excel sheet and pasting it into an ERP or a software, then your job is definitely at stake. So you should start to either improvise yourself to become more strategic in nature, or try out something else within procurement which would be more beneficial for you. And you shouldn't be doing that kind of work regardless, whether there's technology coming your way or not. Does that help, Mahesh?
Yes, but that is whatever you told, that is related to growth of the employer. If you have taken me as you told your friend SBI manager and the new employer, yes, that is the personal growth. I am asking you on technology, it will complete whole procurement.
I'm sorry, Mahesh. Can you repeat that? I didn't get the last part. You're asking about technology?
What I am understanding is what you are telling as of now. I understood that it is a growth of the employee. Like right now,
you as a procurement profession. Yeah.
Yes. It is if another technology will add it to me, it will helpful my personal growth, right?
Absolutely.
As a procurement, I will go for the next stage or anything. because it will improve my personal growth.
Yep.
I am asking, it is impact on procurement, like what
As a function.
yes.
Okay, absolutely. So from a procurement function itself, now it depends on what kind of an organization you are, Mahesh. If you're a big organization, for instance,
I am from healthcare. You
okay,
know Apollo,
healthcare.
right? Apollo Hospitals.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. Apollo Hospital, I get
I
you.
am from Apollo Hospitals.
So,
Yes.
got you. So as an organization, right, it is critical that you pick up a technology, whether it is whatever is within your reach, is because for you to analyze your track data, manage data, to analyze if there's any issues, the technology helps you. It's a enhancement, right? Now it all depends
Okay.
on whether you as an organization are up for it, whether you can spend the money there. And the other part is, unfortunately, many people run away from technology because they're worried and they presume that it's too costly. There are many technologies which
That's
are
true.
also within your budget, and things that you could pick and choose in piecemeal. For instance, whatever is the most painful piece in your overall procurement process, you can just take that particular function, deploy it this year, 2023, and then next year you can move into the second most painful thing. The year after that, the third most painful thing, and eventually you can spend bit by bit and completely transform your procurement operations. And see, I've helped customers not only with Ariba, Coupa, Ivalua, S4 HANA, whatever these Oracle, all these big tools. I've also deployed a SharePoint procurement website for my customer. So he didn't have the money, but he had the zeal or the energy to convert himself or transform himself into a technical or technology based procurement team. So we did it on a SharePoint as well for a customer because he wanted certain priorities. So it could be done. It's only if you have the zeal to do it, you will do it.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Manish.
Can I ask a follow-up question to this, Karthik? A lot of times technology can be bought these days. A lot of, likes, followers, business like looking good on the front, all of that can be bought. But that might not necessarily make it a money-making machine. Right. So like sometimes making profits and technologically looking good might be two different things. And do you think sometimes procurement teams might get confused and might focus on making it look good, hoping that that is going to generate profits rather than generating profits and hoping the technology will catch up, like, the likes and the follows and the comments and the news about it and all of that?
Yeah. So if you look at it, right, procurement, that's where I keep talking about the diagnostic study. You need to see your appetite, whether you are, for me, the base of all of it is a business process. If you're a mature business process, then you could take a mature tool. If your business process is very weak, then you need to up your business process and take a technology that suits that business process area, right? If you don't have anything, you cannot go with something that is best in class. I would not recommend. I would still ask you to take baby steps, and definitely not recommended. I've seen a lot of the big guys that because they have a particular ERP, which a particular tool set, they want to just buy products similar to that or something that ties a parent or a child entity of the ERP. So that's not right either. Or if you're seeing that I'm Coca-Cola, I'm just taking the technology because Pepsi bought a technology. That's not the right way to go about it, right? Especially in procurement. But if you're into production or whatever, then it makes sense. But in procurement, it's a different ballgame altogether. I don't want to just take the same tool that they bought because they did, right? Maybe you're different in terms of how you run your organization. So it's very personal to you. That's the reason I keep talking about the diagnostic study to ensure that you know what you want.
Correct. Sometimes like that shallowness is needed, and sometimes you need depth to then eventually like get like
Absolutely.
I fully get it. Okay. So since it's World Cup season and people are going crazy watching football and cricket, and that's all like my social life is about these days. Um, what can the function of procurement learn from, you see Neymar, Messi, and, you hear of all the cricketers and their stories and clubs and all that's going on. What can the function of procurement learn from cricket and football?
Absolutely. These are the two sports that have been very close to me. Me being a cricketer as well as a football player. I broke my hand playing football. The first time I broke my hand was while playing football. So, few things that come to my mind are like my coach used to always tell me, right? Whether it's World Cup or whatever may be the case, practice isn't optional. You cannot directly go and play the final match, right? You need to practice, and it is very important in procurement as well, especially when you look at it in terms of negotiations. You need to prepare, practice your negotiation strategies or how you want to look at the overall business process. So you need to practice a lot when you're getting into a negotiation, prepare the data and all of that. That's one thing that comes to my mind. Um, Another leadership lesson that I see is uh, coaches can't play. For instance, you have to empower your team for them to take the decisions or run the particular procurement negotiation strategy as such. The leader cannot come in on every deal and make the decisions for them. So the coaches can't play. You have to be in the game to go in and participate in these negotiations and bring the best deals for your companies. Um, Cricket and football, where there's a lot of playbooks, right? They have these strategies of how they want to run a particular play to ensure that they get maximum results. So in procurement as well, there are a lot of playbooks. There could be a contracting playbook. There could be a procurement policy and procedure playbook as to how do you want to run your procurement operations. That's another thing. And in cricket or football majorly is your objectives are very clear. What do you want to do? You want to hit as many goals as you can and defend as much as you can. And procurement should have very clear cut objectives or goals that need to be set up for them on a yearly basis. And they need to keep evolving as to how best they can achieve those goals. So these are the 3-4 things that come to my mind, Devangana.
I love that. Tell me something to talk a little more about, like procurement of players, how that works, the thinking around that, and how that is also like what is something there that we can learn from football or cricket.
Sorry, procurement of what you said?
Procurement of players, like how certain football clubs will pay like $1 gazillion to get a certain player.
Yeah.
So that's like also the
So
supply chain. Huh.
absolutely. So I have a friend who is the chief procurement officer for NBA, the biggest basketball the organization. And what I've heard is for there's a lot of media spend, and media spend is the major chunk of their business. There is hardly little to any negotiations around that, is because the marketing and media is very heavy handed from the business side. So you are just like a partner working with them to ensure that they're getting the best deal. But you may or may not, it's more so running that particular relationship in the most risk free, cost effective, less of cost effective, but a better relationship with the supplier as well as the client, than really wanting to save money, because you want to, there is a cost for instance, if you get the best of the players, you'll have more sales of tickets. So they really don't, it's just a matter of getting the best guy, even though you're spending a little more. So that's what I've heard in terms of the procurement of these big cricketing stars or any other sports star as such.
So Karthik, like this is the most important part, I think, of this entire discussion. You've been a part of so many roles, so much work in building procurement teams and building procurement functions. What have been some of your most interesting projects in the face of procurement? What did you learn? What were some of your biggest insights? You don't need to even go into specifics if you don't want to, but just like what could you teach us from your life in the field of procurement?
For sure. as you asked that question, right, there are two projects that stand out in my mind. Maybe I'll throw another one just in terms of learning as such. One of the most interesting ones, the recent ones, was me deploying a bot, a robot in procurement, where the bot would go in, create and run your RFP, which is your request for proposal process. So it ran the entire technology on a present day procurement solution where you got a requisition. Once the requisition hits your desk, the bot would look at the requisition and it takes the decision that it needs to be, you need to run a RFP against it. So it basically gets the data from the requisition, pulls it into an RFP. We have a set of suppliers on the back end. It selects the supplier, sends the RFP, and then you're basically left with the responses of the supplier, or maybe you get to see the RFP before it goes out, depending on your requirement. And then that was like so interesting to me is because present day, at one hand, I have many customers who are even manually to do the steps, they are banging their heads to the wall. And there's this company who's done it with a bot, where basically the guy doesn't need to sit on a computer to go hit the create button, fill the 250 fields and all that. So the bot is doing all that for him. So it was so amazing to kind of do that transformation. And it was one of the most painful projects to me, is because the people in that organization were like 45, 50 plus years of experience or age. So it was very difficult for them to contemplate something like this to happen in their current era of working. So they never expected. So it was very difficult to make people imagine and think through and see how the future might look like. So that was one of the best projects that I did. The other, on the flip side for me, was this organization where all of their leadership team was fired a year before, is because they did some corrupt activities. So they were getting kickbacks from suppliers, and they were audited, and they were tied to the royal king in one of the countries in the Middle East. So it was a big thing, because if it comes out in the paper, it's a lot of bad rap, right? So I was called in to look at their their current business process and redo all of it, all the red tape and all the bad things that they did. So basically, I have to redo everything to bring them back to a level where there is no more corruption, and there's a best practice process that you see within their organization. So that was another 360-degree turn, and there was a lot of learning, a lot of angry people, because I was getting in and trying to change everything. So people really didn't like me. They were unhappy of me being in there. But the end of it, they were happy because everything turned out to be in a nice way and smooth operations for them. So now they're in a much better state.
Love that. That's excellent.
And
Yeah,
Doctor,
sometimes
one
there's
question
resistance.
from my end.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
with respect to the bot, what you are saying has been implemented. So, whether this is implemented all across the values of the RFPs or to certain value thresholds itself?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So it was basically to two values, Anand, in particular. The one in the middle and one at the bottom, which was contributing to 40% of their spend, 45% of their spend. And right now we're working at how do we want to expand that further into the high strategic projects as well. So we're trying to find ways of how we could do that as well.
Okay. But at least getting this done is some kind of a gain. Yes.
Absolutely.
It is very much appreciated.
And mind you, this is not just, it doesn't tie to tail spend only. Even if it's a strategic project as well, half of the work is done by the bot, and then you can run another round over it, right? As a category lead. So it's doing the preliminary RFI or some preliminary analysis for you, and then you can take it over from there. So that's how also, that's the other thing that we're planning on doing with these guys.
So, is it chargeable that you provide this bot, or can we get it for
It is.
free from you?
So yeah, you have. So the bot that I deployed here was Blue Prism bots, but I do have other good vendors in the market where the bots are for free, but there is a membership charge and many other things. So we could think of different types of bots depending on your appetite that you want to pick up. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, doctor.
Thanks, Anand. Any other questions, guys?
Yeah, one from my end. So, doctor, what do you think? How important it is for a procurement professional to be financially intelligent? Because
I-
most of our procurement guys, means even I, follow our predominantly used type reporting type of savings that we do, that we say that we have spent this much and we have saved this much. But finance is a record keeper, but they are able to show exactly where the gain has hit them in the process. So why can't procurement professional also do this, so that they show wherever they have gained into the process where it has impacted the most? Because that is something which is recognized by the organizations very quickly.
Absolutely. And I've been trying to convince, and I have convinced a few CPOs at least, right? Where CPOs who are reporting into CFOs, right? Where we show our matrix or the way that we as procurement help the bottom line through a balance sheet. So I've done this working with metrics and reporting team, sitting with metrics and reporting team who are managing the KPIs across the organization for other departments as well. And because the finance guy doesn't care, unfortunately. So you as procurement should speak their language if you really want to make things work out, right? And it is absolutely essential for you to understand finance, because they are your far off cousin brother. There are a lot of other podcasts that I can send you the details on. And I have this when I'm helping build a business case, right, for a procurement professional. I have this wonderful slide which lights the bulb of the CFO as to how procurement will help them in their balance sheet. So I'll share that with you guys after this meeting, and that's a
Yes,
good way of
that will help.
picturizing how procurement can help the bottom line.
Of course, that will help us. Yeah.
Sure, Anand. I'll send it over to you.
One more from my end, doctor. With this present volatile situations, earlier there were situations where we used to go for a contract of 2 years or 3 years, say. But now in this particular situation, most of the companies do not want to go ahead with the contracting for 2 or 3 years, price locking, since the market is very volatile. The vendor can come back to you again with the price increase, even though you have got a contract available with you. So, how do you foresee the approach towards the contracting in the present scenario?
I would flip it a little differently, Anand. So I would make a stronger supplier relationship process or supplier management process to keep your suppliers closer to you, and ensure that you have a rigorous way of onboarding your suppliers, and also finding that you have the right suppliers in place, which is your incumbent as well as your potential new suppliers in the market. Always be on the lookout, and that's how you would need. And I think it's a good thing to have contracts for a shorter duration. I know the prices keep varying, but you need to be closer to your category and have the backup suppliers as to, if this guy doesn't work, what's the other guy? Who's the next best guy for me? And you need to ensure that you let the current contracted supplier know about it and keep it as a very healthy competition as well. That's how you can manage. I don't see any other way around this as a fact, except for having a strong supplier management process as such.
Noted, doctor. Thank you.
Karthik,
Thanks, Anand.
Thank you guys. This was such good questions, and that just made me think the procurement function is a very critical function, and I think sometimes procurement teams don't take it so. Where have you seen like the procurement functions go very wrong? Like the procurement teams work like actually like just create a lot more trouble than good things.
So what I've seen, the fortunately, maybe it's a cultural thing, or the way that people presume, or that's how procurement has functioned over the years. Fortunately or unfortunately, a lot of our procurement professionals have been in the role for a while. And what I've seen a few bunch, and I don't typecast the entire procurement fraternity as such, but procurement has been acting like it's been like a postman's job that we've been doing. We got a request, we just ensure that you process the request and you pass the buck and you got it done with. So instead of being actively involved and working with the requester and the supplier with the compassion of what you want to, how you want to help the overall organization reach its objective. That zeal or thought process, not all procurement professionals have. Unfortunately, we've been acting like doing a postman's job for many, many years, and that's kind of has gotten into your blood, and that's what you're continuing. But there's these lot of new leaders who are coming up and changing that, but change doesn't happen overnight. So it's taking a while for that to completely switch over.
I'm going to ask you one last question. Karthik, what do you see as the immediate future of procurement? You know, we've come out of COVID, all industries died and they got alive and they started to hustle, blah, blah, blah. What do you see as the future of procurement over the next 5 years?
So I see procurement's future to be very bright, considering all the things that I've told, right? Which may seem a lot of negative, but I'm the kind of guy who's very open and honest and likes to put things the way it is, right? But the reason I am in procurement is because I see a lot of opportunities. The one beautiful thing about procurement is no 2 days are the same. Even though it's completely different when you go from one organization to the other one. It's very exciting for me is like, you see the number of questions being asked on this particular event as well. Devangana, so many people joining in, they're coming in, they're asking questions, they're so interested. And I see a lot of youngsters who are taking up, for instance, they're taking up a degree and they want to understand whether procurement is the place to go. Whereas traditionally or historically, procurement, a person getting into procurement is by mistake or is forced. That's how the past was. The future is switched to this now. Yeah. So
it was a place of misfits.
That's right. It was a place of misfits where no one wanted to take them. So now I've seen people, youngsters coming and asking, Karthik, bhai, can you help me? I'm planning to get into procurement. Does it work well? So that itself is a good sign. 5 years from now, I see a lot of integration between procurement and the other departments, a lot of technology enhancements within procurement. My worry is the technologies are going to be so enhanced that the procurements are going to seem not ready to adapt to that change of the latest technology. So that's the reason I keep focusing that we need to bring up the level of procurement, whether it's people, process, whatever may be the case. So procurement needs to step up to live up to the latest technology enhancements that we have. Else we might miss the train.
I love that. I love that because that's going to be more competition, more creativity, more hustling. And I think that all of it is like history keeps repeating itself. It's like survival of the fittest. So you just keep fighting. I love that. That's super. That's absolutely right. Sure. Anything you want to share, Karthik, with us? One last thing.
No, it's been a pleasure, and I hope you guys enjoyed. I love these discussions. I'll be you make me sit and talk for hours together. I'll just be blabbering, but it's just because I love being in this space. It's so close to my heart.